Mr. Speaker.
Dr. Parmjit Parmar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on the Gambling Amendment Bill number 2, third reading. I'm not on a government administration committee, so it's a real privilege to be able to speak on this bill. Mr. Speaker, as we have heard, the Gambling Act 2003 took effect on 1st July 2004, and as it happens, with time we learn, observe, and bring reforms. And this has happened time and time again, and is happening to this act, which brought major reforms to the gambling sector. It's very important that the intent of the Act is maintained. The amendments in the bill are consistent with the intent of the Act, which is to minimize harm from gambling. Mr. Speaker, before I get into any technical aspect, I would like to highlight that National is aware of issues around gambling, and our interest is to reduce the harm that can be caused by gambling. We also keep in mind that we work on making sure that returns to the community are taken full advantage for the betterment of our communities. Mr. Speaker, the problem gambling levy currently is raising $55 million over 3 years to fund services and minimize the harm caused in communities. And various organizations use this as a source of funding for their services which are provided to wider communities. And they are required to be accountable, according to this bill, for the grant or funding that is awarded to them from gambling societies. Mr. Speaker, the amendment to the Act will make sure the regulatory framework operates as it is supposed to, and that gambling operators know their obligations. The behavior of some Class 4 gambling societies has been disappointing, and there have been efforts put in place to make progress in this area. There has been a number of prosecutions, and a clear message has been sent to the sector. Mr. Speaker, as I believe in personal responsibility and realize that the gambling policy is always a balancing act for the government, because there are some people who know how to engage in activities that are kept strictly at a social and a leisurely level. But then there are a group that can be prone to become addictive, or some way just get into gambling with the hope, or shall we say false hope, of winning something big. It depends very much on an individual, Mr. Speaker. I have seen families that gamble on occasion and understand the separation it needs from their life, while other families have struggled with addiction, hence leading to rifts in families and financial situations. Once again, the situation is very subjective to the individual. Overall, if we look at the number of pokie machines, the numbers of pokie machines have actually decreased significantly since 2003. And this number should continue to drop because, as per local councils, venues with gambling machines that close down cannot be replaced. Mr. Speaker, a major focus for the government is on ensuring that the Gambling Act 2003 can be properly enforced. And these changes are intended to resolve any confusion about meaning and reinforce to the sector how important aspects of the Act work. For example, the SOP that clarifies the ongoing obligations on gambling societies after they are licensed. With regard to the additional provisions in the Act relating to Class 4 gambling, that is non-casino gaming machines, Class 4 gambling which includes all non-casino pokie machines, from this at least 37% of all net proceeds must be returned to the community. The government takes problem gambling seriously, and our policy on Class 4 gambling is to minimize the harm caused while maximizing the returns to the community. Harm minimization is a priority for this government. The bill has additional harm minimization regulation-making powers, which may offer the opportunity to introduce additional well-targeted interventions in the future. For example, regulations could be made to specify minimum standards or content for problem gambling awareness, training for venue staff.
Order. I regret that I interrupt the member, but the time has come for me to leave the chair. This debate is interrupted and set down for resumption next sitting day, and the House stands adjourned until 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 24th of February 2015.